All right, folks, it's almost that time of year again. We've got preseason NFL games kicking off. So I figured, it's good enough time to do my annual uh, preliminary NFL season predictions. Now, the thing is, the NFL, it's a 17-week schedule, so obviously things are going to happen. Players are going to get injured. There's going to be staff turnover. There's going to be so many things going on. This can completely alter the entire dynamics of all these matchups. I mean, even something like weather. I mean, there's that huge freak snowstorm in Buffalo last year, and that creates some definite field changes. It determines, basically what sort of environment you're playing in, which affects the outcome of games. So, before I kind of give away any of these predictions, I have to preface it with that huge caveat. These are all based simply on paper with the expectations that absolutely nothing unpredictable happens. But as we know, the NFL is the most unpredictable thing in the world, so take this with a grain of salt. In fact, take this with a pitcher of salt because it's probably not going to be accurate. But it's the best I have with what I have to work on now. Okay, let's start with the AFC. These are my predictions. Starting off in the AFC East, I have it written down as North here because that makes sense, even though it's not accurate. A lot's been made about Deflategate, and you've got Tom Brady missed the first 4 games of the year. But actually, I think the Patriots are still in a very good position. They have pretty much the same core of their Super Bowl winning team last year. Great offense. They can rack up points with the no-name running backs. I can't even name a single wide receiver on the Patriots, but their O-line is so good. Brady is so accurate. Just everything is gelling for this team. I don't really see basically Brady's suspension really impacting this team at all. I think they go 12-4 easy and win the division, no contest. Now, I think looking at the rest of the AFC East, now I do think that the 2 wild card teams will actually come from the AFC North as well. Miami is a much improved team. I think we've been looking at Ryan Tannehill as a really breakout quarterback. I think this is the year he finally makes it. Of course, having Sue in the lineup, you have one of the most dominant defensive players, depending he doesn't get suspended for 10 games. But overall, this has been a team that's been improved so much offensively and defensively. I think this is the year they finally turn the corner and make an impression, second in division, and clinch the 5th seed in the playoffs. New York Jets, kind of controversial, but I think their offense is there. They have the weapons. If they can get the run game going, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Their defense is a little bit iffy, but most of the teams in the AFC, say maybe like 2 or 3 examples, have iffy defenses. So I think they have enough to kind of go 9-7, and there's going to be a bunch of fluky things happen at the end of the season, which ends up giving them a better percentage through all the NFL hullabaloo and puts them as a 6th seed in the playoffs. Buffalo, say what you will about Rex Ryan. I mean, the defense is going to be improved, but they're still not anywhere near together as an offensive unit. 6-10. People are predicting them to not only make the playoffs but win the division. To me, it's just preposterous. So sorry, Buffalo. Your bad luck continues. All right, over in the AFC Central, the Bengals have pretty much dominated this for the last 2 or 3 years, but I see Pittsburgh finally making their resurgent comeback. Good quarterbacking, good offense, but the defense is so improved this year. I think it's going to propel them to win a lot of games that they probably shouldn't win with a somewhat lagging offense. Baltimore coming in 2nd seed. I see them taking a big hit to what they had last year. Tough division, really tough road games this year. I see them with a winning record, but not enough to make the playoffs. Cincinnati, I see them dropping 8-8. Pittsburgh and Baltimore are definitely going to give them hassles, and they've got some non-divisional games. I think can give them a little bit of a challenge. So I see them finishing 500 and not making the playoffs. Cleveland, pretty much the same as last year, 4-12. Quarterback controversy, no running backs, wide receiving core not really up to standard, defense lacking. They're still got about 2 or 3 years of rebuilding, in my humble opinion. AFC South, this might just be the worst division in the NFL this year, which is kind of funny because they're going to have the best overall team in the AFC with the Colts. So I think they go 13-3, led by Andrew Ryan, and they're very potent offense, great O-line, great D-line. Not the best defense in the world, but certainly enough to kind of get things going. 13-3, they win the South easy. But the rest of the division is going to be pretty lackluster. I think the Texans, up until you had the Aaron Foster injury and you had Andre Johnson going out, I mean, they've got a really good defense, but that offense is just slagging off. So I see them doing 7-9 at the best. Jacksonville, believe it or not, I think is going to be a little bit improved. They're going to be the worst team in the league, let alone the worst team in the AFC South. I see them going 5-11, but mostly that's by flukes. They're still years away from being a contender. And Tennessee, I see dropping to 3-13. I know they got Mariota, but that's just a team in shambles. They're probably going to be in the contention for the first or second pick in the 2016 NFL draft. So don't see them doing much of anything. Okay, over in the AFC West, I'm going to be a little bit controversial because everyone's picking Denver, and I think this is the year where really the Broncos just collapse. I mean, they still post a winning record. They go 9-7, but I think there's just going to be so many things going wrong. Peyton Manning's going to have a dip. Their defense is going to show signs of rust. And for that, I think not only did the Broncos not win the AFC West this year, I think they don't even make the playoffs. So winning record, but not enough to get in. I got the Chargers, just looking at them, good defense, a very potent offense. If they can kind of get things clicking in a relatively easy division, I think Denver's going to be anywhere near as good as they were in years past. Same thing with Kansas City. I think they pretty much roll 11-5 record, third overall seed in the AFC in the playoffs. Denver, like I said, 9-7, and I do think this will be Peyton Manning's last year. I mean, he's pretty much reached the pinnacle of his career, and it's all downhill from here. I think you're going to see him take a pretty big hit this season. That's sort of portending to be the end, and I think he'll probably, give it up while he still puts up a semi-respectable season, then just go completely downhill in 2016. Oakland, we all know I'm a huge Raiders fan. They're my team. They went 3-13 last year. I did a video earlier this year where I said, I think they're going to go 7-9. You can watch that. No real need to kind of regurgitate that there. In Kansas City, this is crazy. I was actually looking at a report by Harvard, because Harvard does NFL predictions now, and they said they had the highest potentiality of making the playoffs of any team in the AFC, which to me just proves the point that Harvard, you should stick to doing nuclear biology and working on submarine physics, because you just don't know anything about professional football. Kansas City, a very good offense, but that defense is not clicking. They've lost way too many key offensive players and defensive players, really, especially on the O-lines and D-lines over the offseason. I see them going 6-10, really disappointing, which means finally the Raiders are not the worst team in the AFC West. So, small miracles. Okay, switching over, NFC. Let's start with the NFC East, not the North as I have written here, but that makes more sense. Philadelphia Eagles have gone 10-6 under Chip Kelly last two seasons. I think they're going to go 10-6 again. But this time, finally, fate smiles upon them, and that's the best record in the division, and they end up winning it. Really, I don't know what's going to happen. They have that crazy offensive scheme, and they have a really solid defense, and I think it's a pretty bad NFC East division this year, so they're going to win pretty much all those games, maybe save one or two. So there's really no excuse for them to not go out there and just dominate. As far as who's going to be their quarterback, I really don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards Tim Tebow. I think he's going to have that insane, unpredictable comeback, because that happens in the NFL. But like I said, you never know. I just think Chip Kelly, he's got a stratagem going on up there. And I think that's pretty much all you need to know. The Giants, this is going to be a controversial pick. Now, we all know Eli Manning had a terrible year last year. But there were some signs of optimism. You got Beckham Jr. up there, or Beckham Jr., Odell, probably one of the best promising receivers in the league. Pretty good run game. And then you had JPP blow two of his fingers off in the offseason. Now, normally that would be enough to kind of have me hit the off button, but I think there's just so much crazy stuff going on, and I think they've got some pretty easy outside the division games that they'll probably end up winning. That's enough to get them to not only a winning record, but actually put them in the playoffs again. So like I said, I know it's very crazy. It's sort of an upset pick, but I'm going with it. Dallas is completely in disarray. They have no running backs. I think Tony Romo is going to have a substandard season. They had to hold out with Des Bryant. There's going to be too much drama to deal with. I think they go 8-8. Huge fall off from last year. And Washington, 4-12, quarterback problem is just going to plague them for the next couple of years. Really no other offensive or defensive standouts. Really, the Redskins are the new Raiders. Ownership in complete disarray, terrible management, coaching carousel. Nobody knows who the quarterback is. So I think they're probably 4 or 5 years away from really sort of rebuilding. NFC Central. Controversial pick here for sure. Green Bay Packers 14-2, best record not only in the NFC, but the best record overall in the NFL. This is going to be a year where they just completely dominate, looking like the team from a couple of years back where they went 15-1. They're just a bad team. When I say bad, I mean very intimidating, complete offensive juggernaut, a very good defense, and they just run the ball so well. This is a team that's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Aaron Rodgers probably your MVP. Minnesota is going to be the big comeback team of the year. They finally got Adrian Peterson back, and they're going to win a whole lot more games than they did last year. I think they're probably going to drop a couple of divisional games, though, and that's going to hurt them. So even though they do have a winning record, and they look very, very good heading into 2016, they don't make the playoffs this year, but they're going to be much improved thanks to AP. Chicago, really see them kind of stagnating this year. They're going to have a huge quarterback controversy, defense and offensive questions all over the place at 5-11. And I think this is probably the big surprise of the year. Detroit Lions, even though they have Calvin Johnson, losing Sue and really kind of the core of that defense is going to be huge for them. I think this goes from being a playoff team to one of the worst teams in the league. I see them accumulating a 4-12 record, probably due to a major injury. Probably Calvin Johnson. If he goes out, forget it, this team's done. NFC South, easily the worst team in the league last year, but this year I think they might actually be one of the better ones. Atlanta has a very, very easy schedule and a very weak division. I think they make a comeback. They're going to have a really porous defense, but that offense is going to be clicking, so I think that's enough to give them a 10-6 record and give them the division. New Orleans, they've lost a lot of weapons to be sure, but like I said, they're in a pretty unpredictable division, and as far as their non-divisional games, I think they can win quite a few of those. Enough to make them go 9-7 and shockingly make the playoffs. Carolina, I see them sort of dropping. They're going 7-9, nowhere near as good as they were last year. And Tampa Bay, even with Winston, I think this is a team in complete rebuild mode, 3-13. All right, heading over to the West. Seattle, 12-4, really not much to say. I think Russell Wilson will be playing probably not as good as he did last year, but still offensively great team, defensively great team. Second best overall record in the NFC, not controversial at all. St. Louis, very good team last year. They go 9-7, almost make the playoffs, but not quite their year yet. Arizona, I see them dropping off 7-9. Really not much to say there. And of course, the 49ers, complete disarray, 4-12 team. And before we go on, the playoffs here, we're going to have two teams playing in Los Angeles in 2016. Now, as to which two teams, I don't know. But just look at this. You got teams in Oakland. You got teams in San Diego. You got teams in St. Louis. Trust me, when I do my predictions next year, you're not going to be seeing two of those cities represented. So just thrown out there is perhaps a bigger story. Now, we come to the actual playoff brackets. So I've got San Diego and the New York Jets playing in the wild card rounds of the AFC. Also Pittsburgh and Miami, Philadelphia and New Orleans, Atlanta and the New York Giants. Need to get a marker real quick, so hold on 1 second. So a lot of teams that made the playoffs last year, I don't see making it this year. And a lot of teams that didn't make the playoffs last year do make it. So lots of surprises, but as you'll see, we're going to see some very, very similar looking outcomes once we get to the final brackets. Okay, San Diego against the Jets. Playing in San Diego, you know what? San Diego's going to be a very good team. They've got great quarterbacking, very good receiving cores. But I just think the Jets, somehow they're going to get this thing going, and they're going to pull off the upset. So I got them as a 6th seed, beating the 3rd seed Jets, beating the 3rd seed Chargers. So that puts them up against the Colts in the divisional playoffs. Pittsburgh and Miami, really going to be a defensive struggle, I think. Pittsburgh, very good defense, but I think Miami with Tannehill, he's going to be a stud, and he's going to make some plays. It's going to be a tight game. It's going to be won by a field goal, but I just think Miami is going to get the upset here, even though Pittsburgh will probably post the best defensive statistics in the league. So I know, like I said, that goes against numerical data, but like I said, NFL, you can't predict it. So look at that. We've got the 3 AFC East teams competing in the divisional round. So we'll see if that comes to fruition in January. All right, now we're working over here in the NFC. Philadelphia against New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans is going to be a very good team. They still have pretty much the best offensive core of that Super Bowl winning team. But Philadelphia, like I said, is going to be too fast for them. If they can get an amped up defense, they're going to do quite well. But it's going to be a close game, probably closer than most people expect. But I still have Philadelphia winning it, probably by a touchdown. So as a third seed, that means they're going to be playing against Philadelphia. And Philadelphia will be playing against Seattle, in a divisional round. Atlanta against New York Giants. Atlanta's going to have the better record. They're going to have a good offense, but I think this is when the Giants' defense comes alive. Eli Manning gets going. He makes some passes, and Falcons collapse, as they always do. So it gives us the Giants and Green Bay. So here we go, looking at our divisional rounds. Let's start with the NFC. It's going to be a very close contest. Seattle, this is going to be a close game. I mean, Philadelphia's going to make the guys up there in the Pacific Northwest bite their nails. But ultimately, I just think Seattle, their defense is just too rough. Russell Wilson, he makes plays, and of course they can run the ball. And whenever you have a team that can successfully run the ball, that's a team you probably want to put your money on. So I've got Seattle punching their ticket to yet another NFC Conference Championship. Green Bay, New York Giants, I see it's probably being a double-digit victory from Green Bay. No surprise there. We got them winning easily in Lambeau. So our rematch of the conference championship from last year's, except, it's flip-flop now. The Seahawks can be playing in Lambeau. So that's going to be interesting. The Colts and the Jets, I think the Colts are going to be an offensive juggernaut this year. I think it's going to put up too many points, and the Jets can't dig their way out. Colts win double digits. No surprises there. And New England against Miami. This is probably going to be the closest game of the entire playoffs. Maybe even going to overtime. But I just see, as it always does, I see the New England defense holding on, and they get that overtime field goal, and they advance. So New England not as good a team as they were last year, but certainly good enough to make it to the AFC Finals. And what do you know? It's yet another rematch. It's the same AFC Conference Championship game we had last year, except now it's been flip-flop. We've got New England visiting Indianapolis. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think this game is actually going to be very, very close. It might come down to like the last possession. But you know what? I think finally the defense for the Colts weathers the storm, and they end up beating Tom Brady, who, of course, Patriots, everybody's going to hate them throughout the year. So it becomes a big dragon slayer there. And Green Bay against Seattle, once again, a very close game, maybe won by a field goal, but I think finally they reverse the script. Aaron Rodgers gets over that hump, and the Packers and the Colts end up being our teams playing in Super Bowl 50, which is pretty interesting because they're very historic NFL teams, so it kind of makes sense. Now, in this one, I hate to make really bold predictions, but I think it's probably going to be a blowout. Colts are good, Packers are better. They're out there playing in Santa Clara. I don't know. I just think the Packers just too good all around. Good running, good receiving core. Rodgers probably going to rack up a record number of yards for a Super Bowl game. I see the Colts winning. Oh, no, the Colts losing. Probably by at least 2, maybe even 3 touchdowns. Sorry, not going to be very interesting for Super Bowl 50, but just going on the data we have now, with all the information, not very interesting. I know I'm going with the same pick pretty much everybody else is, but you know what? We're talking about NFL. We're talking about, very staid data and defensive lineups and matchups and all these variables and man-on-man options. With all that said, it's kind of hard to root against the Packers. I mean, they're the complete package. Great quarterback, great coaching, great organization, great running, great catching, great receiving cores, good defensive unit all the way around, good special teams. So just looking right now as things stand in early August, if I had to go with anybody to win Super Bowl 50, I've got to go begrudgingly with the popular pick and say that our presumptive Super Bowl 50 champions are going to be the Green Bay Packers.